Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back to a new tier list video. Last time I started this new phase on my channel by ranking Star Wars movies and TV series, but now it's time to move into games. And I was thinking what would be the best way to start, and I believe I find it by we're gonna rank Dragon Quest games. As I said, like without a doubt, the best way, especially for me, to start a tier list focused on games. So here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for our national anthem.
So here we are on tiermaker.com once again, where we're going to rank the Dragon Quest games. Obviously, as you can see, we're going to cover only the main series, not all the infinite amount of spin-offs and other games within the Dragon Quest franchise, since that would be impossible for multiple reasons. Primarily because most of those games, like 95% of those games, are exclusive to Japan, so there is no way I can play them. I mean, there are ways, of course, but I'm not that obsessed and crazy that I have to scour every possibility to play at Dragon Quest games. And also, we will be here for like 10 hours, because as we know, Japan is crazy about Dragon Quest, so there are a bajillion spin-offs and various games within the franchise. However, I played most of the main series. I own most of the series. As you know, it's one of my favorite RPG series of all time. So, as I said earlier, I think it's the perfect first video game themed tier list. And let's just start it so I can, like usual, spend a few words on my choices. We all know how tier lists work, so I decided to go for S for my personal favorite game, A for top tier Dragon Quest games, B games that I really enjoyed, however they don't have that oomph that will allow them to go among the best. So there are plenty of positives, maybe some nitpicks here and there that hold them down. C for kind of middle of the road, games that I liked even very much, but they have things that either annoyed me or I didn't like very much. And finally, D, games that are primarily negatives. They're not necessarily bad games, but to me the negatives surpass the positives. And I believe it's not necessary to go lower than D, because there aren't really bad Dragon Quest games to me. So let's just start it from the beginning. Dragon Warrior 1, where it all started back in, gosh, 1985 or something like that. I don't even remember, but ages ago. Also known, as you can see here, as Dragon Warrior in North America. The first game, and alas, with the first game, I'm afraid I cannot go higher than D. Maybe a bit controversial. I don't dislike Dragon Quest 1, but simply the fact that by now, it's way, way out of its time. I mean, for when it was released, when it was brand new, it was probably mind-blowing. I don't know. I don't think I was even born when this game was released in Japan. So, and obviously we didn't have this game in Europe during the NES days. The first time I actually played Dragon Warrior 1 or Dragon Quest 1 was when the mobile phone ports were released. At that point, it was very cheap, and I thought, you know what, I have to play the first game just for its historical significance, which is something that no one and nothing could ever take away from Dragon Quest. It's one of the first RPGs, JRPGs ever made. It's one of those games that actually made JRPGs a thing, like together with the Dragon's Lair, um, a little later, the first Final Fantasy. I mean, it's one of the games responsible for the beginning of JRPGs. So historically, it's very important. But as a game, nowadays, it's just too archaic. It's still fun and very charming. I enjoyed my time with it, but I finished in one afternoon because it's very short. The story, if you can even call it that, is extremely bare-boned, and yeah, there's nothing that really special about it other than charm, nostalgia, and historical values too. So I cannot really go in higher than D for the original Dragon Quest. However, I would definitely recommend to try those mobile phone ports. They're probably among the best way to experience, especially if you're not that familiar with RPGs and or you're curious about old school RPGs. They're good ports, definitely. Very accessible. I'm pretty sure they're very cheap. So even though I put it into D, I fully recognize its importance. It's simply that I played it way too out of its time. Even though I like old school RPGs, there are limits, and Dragon Quest 1, it's kind of borderline too between it walks that fine line between nostalgic and archaic. So I still enjoy my time, as I said. I recognize the role it played and its importance and significance, but it's way too old in a way. Though it was fun playing it. Next, we have Dragon Quest II: Luminaries of the Legendary Line. And I still need to finish this because, again, after I finished the first one on mobile, I bought the sequel and played for a while. But after like multiple hours, I was kind of lost. I wasn't very sure where I was supposed to go. So I took a break from it, played something else, and once I get back to it, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I need to replay it. And I had my eyes on that Switch collection of the original trilogy, so I will definitely get that eventually, so I can replay Dragon Quest 2 and 3. But for the moment, based on what I played, Dragon Quest 2 can go as a comfortable C. It's for when this was released, it is a considerable improvement over 1. You have a party, so you're not on your own. So that it's already a big step ahead. There is a sort of story again. It's not as barebone as the first game, though it's nothing special, but it's still enjoyable. It's more of what you might expect from an 8-bit RPG. So it's a bit further. So it's not as archaic as the first one. It's not ideal, or as I would say perfected as other games in the series, but it's still a good nostalgic. It's a very solid, I would say, 8-bit RPG. Next, we have Dragon Quest III, and this is very good. Actually, I really enjoyed it. I cannot wait to replay it. So for now, 3 is a solid B. This is easily one of the best, I would say, 8-bit RPGs. Compared to the previous 2 games, this has quite a solid and surprisingly good story. Since a lot of people always wonder, where should I start with Dragon Quest? My answer is always wherever you like, because with the exception of this initial trilogy, the Dragon Quest games don't follow a cohesive narrative, so each game it's its own thing. However, the first 3 they tell their own story. So, and 3, as we know, it's the prequel of the previous 2. and it has quite the twist for an 8-bit game, and it's a really cool experience. As I said, I cannot wait to replay it, but this is easily like top tier 8-bit RPG. So if you like those type of RPGs, this is mandatory because it's a really good old school Dragon Quest game. Next we have Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen, which, even though this game was released on the NES originally, on the Famicom, then NES in North America, never in Europe, to me this is a DS game because that's how I played it, of course. And those DS ports of 4, 5, and 6 are absolute treasures and mandatory if you consider yourself a RPG fan. So that DS port of Dragon Quest IV, it's simply amazing, and it's actually one of my favorite Dragon Quest games. So it can confidently goes into A. I absolutely love the story. I like the chapters system actually. I know some people don't like it, as you say, like it removes some of the weight out of the hero, but in a way you can tell that every main character from each chapter is a hero. It's not like in Dragon Quest 3, for example, that's or for future games that you can recruit like party members, but they're kind of insignificant. In here, especially for an 8-bit game, this is quite revolutionary, I would say, for the time, because each party member matters. They have their own stories. And but as I said, like if you want to play 4, just go out and play the DS version. It's fantastic. As I said, I really like the chapter system. I like the individual story and the grand story, which it's told from primarily once you get into the heroes chapter. Really great stuff. And as I said, one of the best Dragon Quest games out there. Next, we move into Dragon Quest V, Hand of the Heavenly Bride, and this is my personal favorite Dragon Quest game. So it goes straight into S whenever the website decided to work. Damn, this website is crap. Anyway, Dragon Quest V is absolutely amazing. Again, I played it on the DS, even though this was released on the Super Famicom, and was not released not even in North America, let alone in Europe. But now that I finally experienced on the DS, I was kind of speechless by how good this game is. It's, as I said, it's my favorite in the series. It's an absolute gem of an RPG. Again, it's one of those games that if you are an RPG fan, you have to play it. Because Dragon Quest has the reputation of being a series not really story focused, or at least usually the story it's rather weak in a Dragon Quest game. 5, and to a lesser extent, even 4, kind of disprove that. These games, and 5 in particular, they have an excellent story. 5 story, it's really good, actually. So, to all people saying Dragon Quest story is crappy, just tell them to play Dragon Quest V, because the story there, it's amazing. And also special shout out to the unbelievably good Dragon Quest Your Story movie. I know for whatever reason, a lot of people are kind of lukewarm toward that movie, primarily because of the twist, which I thought it was excellent, actually. I really like that movie. It looks amazing, first and foremost, and especially the twist, it's interesting. And by the end of the day, that movie, it's such a love letter to Dragon Quest fans, first and foremost, but to JRPG fans to a larger extent. So, again, I don't understand why people didn't enjoy that movie. Whatever though, if you like Dragon Quest, you have to like it. It goes against everything that Dragon Quest stands for, not like in that movie. But in any case, Dragon Quest V, to me, it's the peak of the series and my personal favorite. Next, we have Dragon Quest VI, and this is interesting. Realms of Revelation is a good game on the DS. However, it's kind of a step down from the excellence that is Dragon Quest V. And for this reason, I can say that it can go into a solid B. Again, whatever the website decides to work. It's a good game. It's a really solid Dragon Quest game. However, it's a step down from both 4 and 5 because the story is a bit weaker. Even though it's interesting, it's very focused on this like dream world and real world, but it's, as I said, it's not as memorable as the previous one, especially because 5 was so good story-wise, and then 6 has a less interesting story, less interesting characters, though it's very, very strong in the gameplay department, meaning all these games are basically the same gameplay-wise. It's Dragon Quest, it never really changed, and that's why it's awesome. However, 6 has a strong emphasis on a job system, which is very, very good and addictive, of course. So if you like job systems, 6 is a good place to go. Also, as we know, 4, 5, and 6 are a quote-unquote trilogy, since they have a common thread, which is the Zenithia civilization, let's say. So in fact, among the fan base, these games are known as the Zenithia trilogy. Zenithia trilogy. But of course, they have nothing to do with each other, so you do not have to play them in any order. There's only this common element, and like the Zenithian equipment set and all of that for your hero. But again, it's not a continuous story, so you don't need to play them in order, basically. Next, technically, we would have Dragon Quest VII. Alas, I never played this game because, obviously, what a shocker, this game was never released in Europe during the PlayStation 1 days, because if it would have been, I would have played this 100%, because at the time I was already obsessed with Dragon Quest through the Great Adventure of Dai manga, because that's how I discovered the series, but that's a story for another day, even though I already told it in a previous video. However, the game was never released in Europe, I never played it. I have now the 3DS remake, and I cannot wait to play it. I will play it soon, whenever I find the time. I mean, certainly I cannot play it now, but next year it's one of those games that I will play. So we'll see. I'm very curious to see where it will go into this list. I know what to expect from it, and as I said, I cannot wait to play Dragon Quest VII. However, I have played Dragon Quest VIII, and obviously this game goes straight here. Dragon Quest VIII is amazing. It's one of the best RPGs on the PS2, one of the most gorgeous RPGs on the PS2, and I would argue it's one of the best entry points if you're new into the series, because it's so gorgeous. Also, it has a great story, unforgettable characters, and amazing music, but especially after Dragon Quest VII, there was, again, another kind of like stereotype surrounding the series, and that is it's pretty crappy looking. So if you want the flashy and over-the-top RPG, you go into Final Fantasy. If you want the more old-school experience, the crappy-looking game, the less emphasis on the story, you go into Dragon Quest. And Dragon Quest VIII took all of those stereotypes and threw them down the toilet, basically, because this, as I said, 8, it's one of the best looking RPGs of its generation. It has a great story, far better than all the, I would argue, Final Fantasy on the PS2. And as said, it's one of the best entry points. So my recommendation, if you're brand new to the series, this is an excellent point where to start. One of the best Dragon Quest games, easily. And man, such a good game. I cannot wait to replay the 3DS remake. Again, who has the time to play these huge games? But again, I will play it soon. But already experienced this game on the PS2, and it's an absolute treasure. Next, we have Dragon Quest IX, Sentinels of the Starry Skies. And this is interesting. This is interesting because it's going to go to me right here. 9 it's kind of the only disappointment to me in the series. It's not a bad game, not at all. However, it's kind of a letdown because after 8, my expectations for Dragon Quest were through the roof. Which, by the way, I haven't mentioned, 8 was the first Dragon Quest we had in Europe. So it took us a long time. Then, of course, we started to have the remakes on, like the ports on the DS, the remakes on the DS, and others. But it all started officially, at least, with 8. 9 was the first sequel we had on the DS, and that's part of the problem. I always wanted this game to be released on the Wii for some reason. Because, again, as I praised 8's graphics, I mean, who cares about graphics in the grand scheme of things? However, for Dragon Quest, always seeing that beautiful art by Akira Toriyama, you always wanted to be prettier than what it was, or at least to see the characters not just from the first-person perspective. 8 delivered that 100%. All of a sudden, the game, though, was scaled down to be on, in order to be on the DS, and yeah, it's kind of crappy looking by today's standards. I mean, it's a fun game. I played it, beat it, everything. But I believe I played 25% of that game because one of the reasons why that game was a bit disappointed to me is because most of the emphasis is on its online functions, which I never even touched. Because who am I going to play that game with? I mean, I'm the only one among my friends who even knows something about Dragon Quest, let alone having people buying DSs and Dragon Quest 9 and play together online in the same room. I mean, that's absolutely out of the question. So I have to play. It's kind of undermining story, even though by the end it kind of ramps up, it gets more interesting. But the thing with Dragon Quest 9, it has a very interesting premise and setting. I mean, I really like its idea because it's primarily focused on heaven. Um, so, in a way, to me at least, that could have been very special. However, they never really took advantage of this really cool concept. Because, as I mentioned in a previous video, I would have loved to have this game being a sort of epic war between heaven and hell in the Dragon Quest universe with humans caught in the middle. That would have been amazing, at least to me. And so they could have done this like 100 hours Dragon Quest game on the Wii, looking just as good as 8, but instead we have this almost action RPG on the DS, which was heavily focused on multiplayer. So you can see how it was a letdown for me. It's not a bad game, as I said. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it could have been so much more. That's why it goes into C. Even though some people say it's their favorite Dragon Quest, I would say it's one of my least favorites. And technically next we have Dragon Quest X, but I've never played this. I will never play this because this is an MMO game exclusive to Japan. Who's gonna play it? Certainly not me. However, next we have Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age, and oh boy, this game is good. Obviously an easy A. Yeah, I'm even happy to put it as top of A. This game is phenomenal. I played it on the Switch. It looks fantastic on that console. It plays like a dream. And my goodness, it's one of the most gorgeous games I ever played. And the story is really cool. So many great things about this game. I did not 100% it because the post-game content kind of killed it for me, because it required a gazillion hours of grinding, which I could not give to this game. However, I finished the main story. In a way, I kind of prefer it as it is. I mean, we can talk about it in another video, but I was super happy with. And by the way, it already took me like I think between 70 and 75 hours to finish the game, and then technically I would have to put at least the same amount of time in the New Game Plus to see the true ending, to fight the true boss and all of that. I was like, I don't have time for that. Maybe another time I will go back to it and keep playing, keep pumping hours into it, because I admit it, I kind of missed it now that I'm talking about it, because this game is so amazingly good. Easily one of the best of the series. I cannot even wait to imagine what they're going to do for Dragon Quest XII, even though that's at least 5 years in the making from now. But easily, as I said, one of the best games in the series, and again, together with 8, one of the best entry points in the series. Definitely. Absolutely. If you're new to Dragon Quest, this is a really good place to start. You don't need to play the previous 9 games to enjoy this. Just play this, get familiar with the mechanics, also enjoy the old school missions that you have to do here and there. Those were a lot of fun and very nostalgic. So you can familiarize with the Dragon Quest combat system, with its mechanics, so you're more comfortable to go back into the rest of the series and enjoy it for what it is, the bastion, I would say, of old school RPGs. That, to me, I just hope that it will keep going strong, because yeah, it's one of my favorite series, and I want to play Dragon Quest forever for the rest of my life. So there you have it. This is my current tier list of Dragon Quest games. Most likely it will be updated whenever I play 7, but other than that, I'm pretty happy with my decisions. Definitely let me know what you think. Do you agree, disagree with my ranking? That's up to you in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Take care.